lost interest in a girl because of her hoe face. I male have this friend. She's nice looking, outgoing, funny. We met in school and hit it off as friends. We hung out together or as a group, or me and my girlfriend with her and her boyfriend a few times a week. We have never really been single at the same time, so I never really noticed her romantically. I mean, I noticed she was attractive, but never thought of her romantically. I ended up breaking up with my girlfriend, and a few months later she broke up with her boyfriend. Well, because most of our friends are paired off at a time, we ended up hanging out like 4 days a week. I wasn't aware I was starting to catch feelings for this girl until someone pointed out I stopped dating and approaching other women. It really hit home when she went on a few different dates and I noticed I was jealous. So I sat her down and had a chat. Told her I have noticed recently I was becoming interested in her. I absolutely hated seeing her go on dates with other guys and wanted to see if us dating would be as cool as our friendship so far. First, she smiled. Big, happy, excited eyes. Then something happened. Her smile turned unsure. She explained she had thought of it as well and is interested in giving it a try, but not to the end of the summer. Confused, I asked why the end of the summer. She explained she was in her hoe phase, her words, and she wanted to have a summer of fun before she settled down. The rest of that day was awkward. I cut things short. When she asked, I told her we were fine. My pride was bruised a bit and I was feeling disappointed. But not to worry, we are definitely still friends. I have to admit, the second she chose potentially random hookups and getting run through for the summer over a relationship, all romantic feelings died. I wasn't mad at her. She did nothing wrong. But the way I viewed her had changed. She was forever in the friend zone for me. I took a few days, put my big boy pants on, and we started hanging out again. But it was different. I only saw her as a friend, and I only was interested in seeing her every now and again, not all the time like before. I started dating other girls again. I had no hard feelings. I genuinely enjoyed being around her, only like before when we both had partners. Anyway, one night we were out as a group. We all had a few drinks, and she says, "Hey, good news. Summer's almost over." Oblivious to what she meant till later I say, "That sucks. I love summer." Then I got distracted by other conversations being had. I did notice she was cold towards me the rest of the night. October rolls around. She wants to do lunch, just her and I. We meet up, having a great talk. We talked about our summer. She used this to steer the conversation to us. She wanted to let me know she was ready to settle into a relationship and wanted to go back to our earlier conversation. I told her it's cool. I valued our friendship and think we should stay just that, friends. She wanted to know what's changed and would not let it go. So I had to be honest. I told her that her choice to put me on the back burner for hot girl summer was hurtful, and I feel like if she actually liked me, she would have wanted to be in a relationship with me. She said she knew we would be the real thing, and she needed to get through her hoe phase to give us an honest shot. I let her know the fact she felt we could have been something, and she still chose potentially to get run through by a bunch of strangers instead of starting something real. Tells me she doesn't feel about me the way she thinks she does. I accept that, and stayed friends with her with no hard feelings. But the second she chose to put me on the back burner, I lost all romantic feelings for her. Forever. Because it feels like she was shopping around all summer and settled on me. And I am nobody's backup plan. She got mad, stopped talking to me. Our friends think I should apologize and give her a chance. But those feelings just aren't there. What do you think? Am I the a-hole? I should probably add a timeline. This was last summer. We have seen each other around, but she avoids me if she can. The reason I wrote this now is because a mutual friend and I were talking about last summer, how the fall went, then pointed out she is still single and asked me recently if I have/would change my mind. I don't think they were asking for her because they said she still thinks I'm an ass. Now for the top comments. Because it feels like she was shopping around all summer and settled on me, and I am nobody's backup plan. Just explain it like this and no one reasonable will have an issue. I asked her out and she said no. Until after summer, then she said yes, but I already moved on. There isn't such a thing as reserving a person for a relationship. Simple as, person do whatever they want. If you rejected them but said maybe won't reject you later, yeah, that's still a rejection. This ain't a restaurant or a doctor's appointment. Who does she think she is? Why would she think he would just be available at the end of the summer and open as if nothing at all had changed? Because she is either selfish as hell and thus unaware of anyone's feelings but hers, or she pegged him for a simp who would be waiting in the wings for her like a nice doggy. Possibly both. Respectfully, she put you on the back burner for summer flings and you decided not to wait for her to come around. Not the a-hole. I would consider adding more distance, as she had clearly little regard for you and your feelings. It's not even about the hoe face or summer fling specifically. It's the claim she really liked him too, but still put him on a back burner. If she just said she wasn't sure and wasn't looking for anything serious right now anyways, things could have turned out differently. If like OP, she started feeling jealous after seeing him date others. But she basically said, I like you too. Here is a timeline of when we will start a relationship based on my own selfish desires. See you then. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not paying for my girlfriend's girls trip? Alright, I, 27 male, need some outside perspective. My girlfriend Sarah, 25 female, and I have been together for 3 years. Recently, I won a bet on stake and ended up with a decent chunk of spare cash. Naturally, I was pretty stoked about it. Been thinking about putting it towards something fun or maybe even a small getaway for the two of us. But here's the thing. Sarah found out about my winnings, and now she wants me to pay for her upcoming girls' trip with her friends. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Sarah and I want her to have fun with her friends. But I'm feeling kinda weird about using my winnings for something that doesn't involve me at all. I suggested that she could save up for a trip, or maybe we could split the cost, but she wasn't having any of it. She thinks I'm being selfish, and that since we're a couple, my money should be our money, especially since it was extra cash from a bet. I see her point, but I also feel like I earned it and should have a say in how it's spent. Sarah's friends are backing her up, saying I'm being a jerk for not wanting to support her. I'm starting to wonder if I'm in the wrong here. I do want her to have a good time, but I also don't want to feel like I'm just a bank. So am I the a-hole for not wanting to pay for my girlfriend's girls' trip? Not the a-hole. So your money is our money. What about her money? Ask her if she will fork out for a boys' trip for you. I second this motion. Just say you're leaving me a little shortchanged on a trip I was planning. Can you help me out after? See what reaction you get then. But not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. She certainly is though. You guys aren't married. She's a big girl. If you want, you could give her a little spending money. But she's super entitled. Red flag. Be careful. Thank you. I'll heed this warning. Yeah, absolute red flag. I wonder if she wanted a chunk of money, would she give it all to you to spend on a holiday with the boys that in no way involves her? I suspect not. And it would be unreasonable for you to expect that. And it sounds like her friends are either being dishonest with her or are also a-holes. Stand firm, tell her it's a no and calmly explain why. Her reaction to this will ultimately show you who she is. Why Sarah's friends are backing her up. Why they are made aware of your financial disagreement. It's the fact that she got all her friends to defend her that's the red flag for me. If you have a dispute with your spouse, that gets handled between the two of you. Sure, you might vent to a friend about the details and get their opinion. But saying, all my friends think you're wrong, is just manipulation. She's not giving any heed or understanding to his argument, and is just trying to guilt trip him to get her way. Why not ask if she's willing to support the both of them while he quits working to follow his dreams of basket weaving? It's all our money, right? Next story. Am I the a-hole for asking my girlfriend to split the hotel cost after she invited her friends without telling me? So I recently took my girlfriend Emily on a weekend trip to a popular beach town. I booked a nice hotel room for us to enjoy a romantic getaway. Everything was great until the second night when Emily invited her two friends, Lara and Kate, to hang out with us. She didn't tell me they were coming, and I was a bit surprised but went along with it. Things got even more awkward when they decided to crash in our hotel room because they didn't want to pay for their own. I was annoyed, but didn't want to cause a scene. The room was crammed with 4 people, and it definitely wasn't the romantic getaway I had planned. The next morning, I told Emily I wasn't comfortable with her friends staying for free and that I felt they should chip in for the room. Emily got defensive and said it was rude to ask them for money since they're her friends. I argued that it wasn't fair for me to cover the entire cost when I only planned for the two of us, and she invited them without consulting me. Emily eventually asked Lara and Kate if they could help with the cost. They were taken aback but agreed reluctantly. However, Emily was still upset with me, saying I embarrassed her in front of her friends and that I should have just let it go. When we got back home, Emily told our mutual friends what happened, and now some of them think I was being unreasonable and cheap. Others think I had a point and that Emily should have asked before inviting her friends to stay. Am I the a-hole for asking my girlfriend and her friends to split the hotel cost after they crashed our romantic getaway? Now for the top comments. Not a-hole, but your girlfriend seems to suck. It's abnormal to invite friends on a couple's holiday, and even worse to expect them to be able to share your room. Exactly. And what's worse is her getting upset and blaming me, when I think it should be other way around. 100%. Flip the script. How entitled would you feel if you brought your boys over to crash the romantic weekend she planned and paid for? You would probably never consider doing such a thing. Now think, she's actually getting upset at you? It's so selfish and rude of her, and so disrespectful to you. If she feels she's able to do this, take a look at what else you are subsidizing. Drinks, dinners for other friends too? Not a-hole. From what you said, you were the one paying for this hotel room, not your girlfriend. Lara and Kate aren't your friends, they're Emily's. So they're getting to stay in a hotel room off of your dime, not hers. I'd personally feel super uncomfortable sharing a hotel room with the friends of my girlfriend when my intention and plan was to just have a romantic time with my girlfriend. I'm not sure how long you've been dating, but frankly, Emily's decision to invite them without consulting you and subsequent decisions and reactions to them staying in the hotel room with you were disrespectful. She's more concerned about being embarrassed, a situation she put herself in, than she is you not being taken advantage of. I don't want to suggest breaking up, but keep her behavior and reaction in mind for the future. Indeed, and I don't know if it's right, but I think I should be the one who should be a little upset with her for ruining our date and not the other way around. You should be more than a little upset. You planned a romantic getaway. Why did she invite her friends? I am guessing she is not into you. Either that or she is an immature party girl. Either way, probably time to move on. I mean, usually she is very helpful, kind and caring, compassionate towards me, so I think she is into me. This is, you can say, one-off instance, but still, like you guys said, it's not my fault. You guys are great. Thank you all for your advice though. But she sure did try to turn it all around you, didn't she? She was being helpful, kind and caring to her friends, not you. She straight up took advantage of your kindness. I almost feel like you weren't enough. So she invited her friends without asking you to have a better time herself. Her behavior would concern me greatly if I were you. Yeah, I'm keeping this in my mind, and it might help me to make that decision later with much weightage. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my ex-fiancé's affair partner's wife about their relationship? So, a few years back, my 40 male fiancé, 39 female, and I were talking on the phone. She was a flight attendant and not home very often, and she brought up breaking up because I deserved someone who could be there for me. I didn't want to, but after a few days, I agreed to split up because it was apparent that this is what she wanted and was on the way out already. It broke my heart. A few months later, she called me to talk, asked if I was seeing someone. I had started talking to someone, and she said she was getting to know someone as well. Turns out, it was a male flight attendant she worked with. A few months before we split up, I had confronted her about this coworker. As soon as they met, they started going out to eat, getting drinks, scheduling flights together. She'd talk about him all the time, etc. I'm normally not a jealous man, but I felt like there was something going on there. When she told me she was with him, I lost it. I confronted him, and he said he knew nothing about me, and that they had began getting to know one another the same day that she insinuated that we split up. How ironic. So I asked her for the truth, and she continues feeding me lies. She says they're not together, just getting to know one another. Nothing happened before we split up, etc. BS. Anyway, I catch her in a number of lies, including the fact that the guy is still currently married. I gave her an opportunity to tell me the truth, and she again lies to me. Frustrated, I contact the guy's wife and tell her all about the situation. The wife says that it all makes sense now. Her husband was getting called up for unexpected flights quite a lot recently and was withdrawing hundreds of dollars each time. She wondered what it was all about, but now she knew. Her husband was cheating on her with my now ex-fiancé, who was apparently living a double life as a prostitute. Turns out, they were only getting to know each other's anatomy, and she was getting to know others as well. My ex flipped out on me. The wife filed for divorce and lots of painful revelations were made, including the fact that she was never faithful to me and was moonlighting as a sex worker. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Cheaters deserve to be exposed. It's one of the worst things you can do to someone you supposedly love. If the relationship is bad, leave before you go looking for someone else. Don't even monkey branch. Actions have outcomes. Hope they enjoy the outcomes of their actions. I also hope the wife reported her soon-to-be ex to HR. I agree. I legit loved her up until these revelations, so it was hard to deal with. Not the a-hole. Yikes. It sounds like you dodged a bullet and saved a man's wife as well. I agree. I found out she was cheating on me with a pilot the entire time we were together. Had a fairly lucrative side gig, as I mentioned in my post, etc. But yeah, definitely dodged a bullet. Funny thing is, she was the one who pursued me initially, said she wanted to date with a purpose. I bought her an engagement ring, etc., but she kept pushing off planning for the wedding. It really sucked, but I'm glad I didn't marry her, knowing what I know now. If someone says they want to date with a purpose, it usually means that they habitually don't date with a purpose. And this is a new goal because they are tired of fooling around. But this is a new goal, and old habits die hard. Definitely not the a-hole. I hope both you and the guy's wife got STI tests done. Your ex is literally a garden tool. Be happy you found all this out and that you did not marry that person. Also, hope you got the ring back. Block her everywhere and never have contact again. Also, don't get serious with people you rarely see in person. That's a recipe for disaster. Fortunately, I did get tested and was clean. Completely agree with you, long distance isn't good for a relationship. Man, you're so lucky you didn't get married and have kids together. She was using you and would have continued to do so. I completely agree. Just before this, I sold a house and bought/get a car to come to the airport in when she visited. She got me on that one. First story is titled, Girlfriend named our son after her ex. I'm refusing to sign the birth certificate until she changes it. This is our first child and he was born a few days ago. We've been together for 4 years and he wasn't really planned, as I don't believe we're in a stable enough position to have children. She was supposedly on a pill, as neither of us like the feel of condoms, but that's another story. She dated a guy for about 8 years and he was her first boyfriend. The story is that they drifted apart and he ended it, but she was still in love with him. We met a few months later and we were friends before we started dating. I got the impression that she was never really over him at the start of the relationship, but it seemed she moved on after the years. And when he moved back to our city 2 years ago, she didn't seem fazed. We met him twice and there didn't seem to be anything weird going on, so I assumed she was completely over him. When we discovered she was pregnant, it was her decision to keep it. I said we weren't ready for children yet, as we weren't married and didn't own a place yet, but she was adamant on keeping it. We argued back and forth over names, and went through various, we have 5 vetoes each, but around 2 months ago, we settled on a name that we were both happy with. The baby is born, everyone smiles, and we're finally back home. It's time to register the birth, and I need to sign the birth certificate. However, to my surprise, the baby isn't called the name we agreed upon, but the same name as her ex. Not just the same name, but the same middle name as well, and then our surnames, after we agreed we'd use both our surnames and forgo the use of a middle name. I couldn't blow my top, of course, as she's still recuperating at home. Plus, there's this whole worldwide mess going on, so I should be happy all 3 of us are back home and safe. I did, however, ask her about it. She said that it was just a spur-of-the-moment thing, or she'll fob me off by saying she's too exhausted to talk about it. She's been fobbing me off for a few days now, so in the end, I told her calmly that I'm not signing the birth certificate until we change the name back to what we agreed. This caused a bit of a row with her, and she's now refusing to talk to me until I sign the certificate and agree to the name. I'm at somewhat of a loss here as what to do. I didn't want a child in the first place, but I was browbeaten into going along with it. And now the name we agreed on is taken away from me? And to add insult to injury, she's named the boy after her ex. And I'm now plagued with doubt and wondering if I should get a paternity test, or whether she's still in love with him. Now for the top comments.
100% get a paternity test. I don't want to disrespect your girlfriend, but it's freaking crazy to name a kid after her ex. Is she okay? Is she suffering from postnatal depression or anything? Not just first name, first and second names. Paternity test all the way. Yeah, this would be completely bonkers, even if she had totally cheated and it was the ex's kid. It's just a screaming banner that says, "I'm obsessed with my ex and / or cheating," which is extraordinarily weird. Something is very wrong here. And if it's cheating, it also goes way beyond cheating. It appears you know what you need to do, so if it helps, here it is. 1. Get a paternity test. 2. Get tested for STDs. 3. Do not sign until the name is changed and you are identified as the father via paternity test. In the end, you'll need to ask yourself if this is the type of relationship you want, because if she is this controlling and manipulative now, it will only get worse. This is the best advice. My opinion? Count it as a blessing that she's refusing to talk to you. Sort of reminds me of the time my cousin, as a child, got mad at her mom and shouted, "Fine then, I'll just go to my room." My mom and her mom looked at each other and were like, okay. Sounds like she thought the baby name line was where she was supposed to put the bio father's name. You should also get a paternity test before you sign a birth certificate to avoid any future issues. At this point, she's done absolutely nothing to indicate that it's your kid, and it almost seems like she's trying to subconsciously tell you it's not. You know, I wonder if that's what could have happened. Maybe she simply wasn't thinking and added the real father's name and passed it off as a child's name to try and hide a mistake. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom she can't come into my house and meet her first grandchild after driving 12 hours? My mom is a textbook narcissist. She's great with babies and stayed home with my brothers and I. But the second we got a little older and could start thinking more independently or didn't need her as much, she started to be verbally and emotionally abusive. She's extremely insecure, mean, bitter, and has tried to break my spirit my entire life. I'm sure she loves us, but her mom was even worse than she was. So she only knows how to be insecure and spiteful. And I'm at the point in my life where I've accepted we will never have a relationship, and she will never be able to give me what I need. She moved 12 hours away once my parents divorced, and we see her maybe 1 to 3 times a year, usually because there's some type of wedding or graduation, but hardly just because or just to spend time. She now has a new boyfriend who is the ultimate family man, super into his children and grandchildren. So now my mom is trying to paint this "I'm a great mom and my children and I have the best relationship" picture to him and all her Facebook friends. Well, I just gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, and we've set rules due to COVID. My mom never offered to come help me, and I refuse to have anyone who doesn't make me feel comfortable or will help me sitting at my house for hours while I try to bond with my new baby, learn to breastfeed, and recover from postpartum. I set these expectations with my mom, and she kept hinting that she wanted to drive up for 24 hours just to see the baby right after she's born, and then leave and come back in a few weeks. I told her no, and if she did, she will not be let into my house. Just wanted to add, of course, she wanted to come see the baby and not help me at all. She just wants her picture and to tell her friends and boyfriend she was there when the baby was born. Anyway, a week postpartum, she showed up at my house wanting to come in and see the baby. Could have been hormones or just me being fed up with her or both, but I refused to let her in my house and told her she needs to respect my boundaries and can't just walk all over me, and I didn't let her in. I want to do everything different for my baby and be a better mom to him than I had, and I felt like this was the first time I've ever stood up to her. My family supports my decision, but of course, this just started another war with my narcissistic mother. So, am I the a-hole? Now, for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Your house, your baby, your rules. Your mother just wants to make her Facebook friends believe she is a supportive grandmother. True that. She is the definition of a Facebook mom. Not the a-hole. She refused to accept your plainly stated boundaries and thought she could manipulate you if she turned up in person. She was abusive growing up and only has an interest now because you serve a purpose in that she can use you and your child to look good. She has no place in your life and will only bring stress and toxicity. Thank you. Not day hall. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. She lost. I'm going to use that. Thank you. Haha. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not being there for my daughter's birth for the sake of my mental health? I, 38 male, have bipolar disorder. I was officially diagnosed when I was 34 after years of denial and ineffective coping. A year later, I got on medication and my wife, 40 female, and I got married. However, a year after that, I realized that while my meds moderated the highs and lows, I felt that my job required a lot of creativity, and the meds were stifling that part of me. Around the time my wife got pregnant with our first daughter, it was her first pregnancy at 38 and was a stressful one. She gained an alarming amount of weight, and she'd yelled at me when I said she was at risk for getting gestational diabetes, even though I merely paraphrased the doctor's words. It turned out to be a 20-hour labor, and when my wife said forceps were her worst fear, a nurse yelled at her. After seeing what they were doing with the forceps, I got lightheaded and threw up and needed to lay down. That birth experience caused me to barely be able to eat or take my meds. 2 years later, my wife got pregnant again. The stress of her going on maternity leave caused my emotions to go haywire. My wife tried to comfort me, but when I look at her, I don't see the girl I fell in love with, and I couldn't look at her the same anymore. This month, she suggested a vacation with her to our cabin up north. I drove up first, but her mom called and said she didn't feel well enough to travel. After the ensuing fight, I texted my therapist and she said to take some time for myself. So, I have been at our cabin for a little more than a week. My mother-in-law calls me 2 days ago to tell me my wife went into labor early. This made me instantly nauseous because I just kept imagining the gruesome, disgusting sights from the last time. And I feared what would happen to me mentally if I ended up having to relieve it all. I didn't know the baby would come so early, and I could feel my head spinning. I had been slowly going off my meds since our 2-year-old was born, and by the time my wife got pregnant again, my doctor has been trying to sell me on med adjustments, which I hate even more. I realized the only thing I could control right now is my environment, and a delivery room wasn't one I could handle. So I ended up staying at the cabin for the rest of the night and through the next morning. My mother-in-law sent me an angry text saying that my wife needed an emergency C-section after 13 hours, and that words can't express both of their rage at me not being there. But then added that she was sure I would have screwed things up. Now I'm driving back, even though my wife screamed at me over the phone that she didn't want me to visit her in the hospital. She also said she rejected naming the baby after her mom instead of what we decided on. Am I the a-hole when even my mother-in-law admitted I would have been no help and might have actually passed out this time around? Now for the top comments. You're the a-hole. You let this entire pregnancy go by without coming up with a plan for the birth? You should have been working on coping mechanisms or a plan for someone else to support her. Instead, you ghosted her. Edit. And holy hell, I forgot to mention the comments about her gaining weight, her maternity leave stressing you out, and her not being the girl you fell in love with anymore because she got pregnant. What a horrible way to treat your partner. Not only that, he didn't realize the baby would come that early. How could anyone be that ignorant? You made a choice not to support your wife through a very traumatic experience and missed the birth of your daughter. You're the a-hole. I've never been in the room during a birth, but can't he just focus on her face or something? Why was he even looking at the forceps if it bothers him so much? When my future wife, fingers crossed, single right now, is pregnant, fingers crossed, my plan was to hold her hand and look at her face. That way I'm being supportive and don't have to say anything too medical-ish. You're the a-hole. You had the option of medication, but chose to prioritize creativity over being a supportive partner and parent. You could have managed your condition and avoided this crisis. Yep, not to mention, for the most part, we're just as creative on the meds as off them. So that's a nonsense cop-out. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for letting my sister adopt my unborn baby rather than a friend who wants a baby? This is a little complicated. My girlfriend and I are 19, and despite all the protection we use, she still somehow got pregnant. My older sister, 34, practically raised me. Our parents were absent most of her childhood and all of mine. Our older brother looked after us. Anyway, I literally call her mom. We're that close. She calls me her firstborn. She's got 3 legal sons, all adopted. They're basically my younger brothers and I love them to death. So, naturally I called her when we found out about the pregnancy. She calmed us down and explained our options. We knew we did not want to be parents, but my girlfriend said she didn't really want a termination, but didn't want another child to go into the system. Anyway, scheduled an appointment to get the baby vamoosed when my sister called again. She said she would adopt our baby if we really didn't want to go through with the termination. Yada yada, that was like 3 months ago. A few friends started asking about names last week when we eventually told them, and we basically explained that we weren't keeping the baby. A friend of ours, M, 21, has been trying for a baby with her husband for like 2 years. We knew, but didn't think much of it. She contacted us asking what we're doing with the baby. I explained that my older sister was going to adopt them. I guess she found my sister through my Instagram or something, and angrily messaged us that she already has 3 kids, and we should think about mothers who can't have children and want one. At this point, we realized what the issue was, and I explained that her children were adopted and she hasn't had them as babies, and we want to keep baby in the family. She didn't reply, but one of her and my girlfriend's mutual friend messaged me asking if I'd reconsider. I told her no, this baby was going to my sister. M messaged me, again, and basically said it was so hard to find a white baby, and practically begging to reconsider. I'm biracial, white passing. My sister is not. I got angry and told her I didn't want some white girl stripping another child of their culture, then sent her on her way. It's divided our friends. Some think that she was racist, and some think she's just desperate for a baby. My sister says we can do what we want with the baby, but her home is always open. I think the baby should still go to my sister, but my girlfriend was really affected by M's words and is concerned that we could be giving a young woman what she desperately wants. We have months to decide, but I'm torn. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. M is for this. M messaged me, again, and basically said it was so hard to find a white baby, and practically begging to reconsider. I'm biracial, white passing. My sister is not. You and your girlfriend should do what's best for the baby. No pity or guilt. What is objectively best for the child? I personally think that if your sister is as great as she sounds, it'll be best for the child and for you and your girlfriend if you decide to be a part of the child's life in the future with her approval. My sister is amazing. I love her so much, and I know the baby will grow up well loved. Not the a-hole. Someone who wants to adopt a white baby but not a black baby doesn't deserve any baby. You also want to keep the baby in the family. It is your baby right now, and will always be your baby, even when your sister takes over caring for them. It's great that you have the option to be able to keep your baby in the family, so they can still get to know you and be a part of your family unit. Haha, explaining family history to this baby when they get older is going to be fun. I'm your older brother, dad and uncle.
First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for giving one daughter's share of the college fund to her sister for grad school after she insisted multiple times that she never wanted to go, and telling her she missed her chance and now she changed her mind? I have 2 adult daughters who are 18 months apart in age. I've been binge watching The Crown, so let's call them Elizabeth, 33, and Margaret, 32. Thanks to a combination of saving and money my husband inherited, we had college funds for them. We told both daughters growing up that we had enough saved for them to get an undergraduate degree debt-free, within reason. We made it clear that we couldn't afford them to go to NYU and put them up in an apartment in Manhattan, but they could go to an in-state school without worrying about loans. Elizabeth was always very studious and got a 75% scholarship to Berkeley. We were able to pay for it, as the scholarship made it comparable to paying for an in-state school. We also went halves with her in the cost of doing a 6-week study abroad trip to Europe that gave degree credit. Margaret was always far less studious and did what she had to do to get by in high school and not an iota more. She chose not to go to college and had no interest in it for years. Margaret has been working in bars and clubs for years and has gotten by fine. She also took some working holiday/backpacking trips abroad. Elizabeth graduated and got a job she was happy with in her field. A few years after graduation, she wanted to do a master's that would enhance her career prospects. We still had Margaret's share of the money. I asked then 28-year-old Margaret if she still had no college plans. Even after I explained I was simply asking to make sure she still wanted to go to college before I gave what was left in the account to Elizabeth for her grad school. Margaret got annoyed about how I'm sick of being asked about college. What part of that do people not understand? We barely ask her, but I know she fielded the question a lot from extended family and with people she met in life. So, we gave it to Elizabeth, who went to/graduated from Stanford with a combination of scholarship/grants and a college fund. 4 years later, Margaret wants the money to go to college and asked us to pay for her. She absolutely lost it when we reminded her. She said she didn't need it, and we gave it to Elizabeth. I think the pandemic has shaken her, and she's realized she needs a real career, as she is now an unemployed 32-year-old bartender in the coronavirus era, and most of her former let's go work/party in Australia for 12 months friends are settling down and having kids. My husband and I simply can't afford to pay for Margaret to go to college now, unless we hand over a huge chunk of our retirement savings and work for many more years than planned. My husband has struggled with a lack of energy since recovering from cancer 3 years ago, so may well need to retire early. I'm also not convinced she has the motivation to follow through all the way to graduation. Am I the a-hole for telling her that we gave her 10 years to take up the option of paying for college? She said repeatedly she didn't want it, and we double-checked before Elizabeth got it. So, she needs to work it out for herself if she wants to go. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. She's a grown adult at this point. And as a grown adult, wouldn't she have an easier time getting financial aid since she wouldn't have to disclose her family's income? Not the a-hole. You gave her many opportunities, including letting her know about shifting the money to her sister's grad school if she didn't want to go to college. She made her decision, free of outside pressure. Yes, and she's 32. I'm not saying a 32-year-old can't go to the college. She was given opportunity to study at the young age, but she didn't take it. Her decision and her choice. But now she's 32 and no one else is responsible for her but herself. If she's that keen, she should take a loan, not the a-hole. I'm 31 and recently finished a master's. While tuition is cheaper here, and I got some low-interest loans to help, at no point did I consider it reasonable to ask my parents to help me out with tuition. Not the a-hole. If it had been just a year or two after high school when you asked her if her decision was final, I'd say it is a bit harsh, especially because I think the pressure put on kids to decide what to do with their whole lives when they are still teenagers is insane. But she was 28 when you asked if her choice was final and she said yes. That's an adult with a few years of life experience under her belt. This. As far as I know, one is usually around 18 when one graduates high school, correct? That means OP gave her 10 whole years to change her mind, and then only ask for plans, not even set a deadline to be enrolled somewhere or something. And she was informed that the money would go to her sister's education. She still refused. That was her choice that she now has to live with. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for only paying for my stepdaughter's college? I, 50 male, have 5 daughters. 4 of which, Anna, 24 female, Allie, 22 female, Alex, 20 female, and Angela, 17 female, are biologically mine. I also have a stepdaughter who is 17 female, Sarah, and we plan on having an official adoption when she's 18. My bio daughters live with their mother, and I had weekend visitations, so I'm not as close to them as I am to my stepdaughter. Here's the issue at hand. I only plan on paying for Sarah's university. My bio daughter's mother is low income, so they qualify for student loans and student aid. Sarah, however, does not, because we have a good income, lower middle class. It's too early now to know what scholarships she will get. Despite our good income, between child support and legal fees for Sarah's custody, we are not as high income as we appear on paper. We did not have the means to start a university fund for Sarah, but we plan on reallocating our finances, taking extra hours, and possibly taking out a loan in our name if we need to, in order to pay for Sarah's university, and then having Sarah pay us back. Plus, Sarah started saving for university when she started working. Angela called me up the other day, since she is also researching and making plans for uni, and asked about financial aid from us. I explained that she will qualify for loans, as did her sisters, and that we can't/won't help her pay. This has since caused a lot of issues. Now all my bio daughters are angry at me for not supporting them. I have loaned them money before, so this isn't true, and for favoring my stepdaughter. I explained to them about them qualifying for loans and told them how much I paid over the years in child support, and it isn't my fault their mother didn't handle the money properly. Also, we are not legally on the hook for paying for post-secondary in regards to child support. I'm not sure if I'm the a-hole here. Reasonably, we can't afford to pay for both Angela and Sarah. Am I the a-hole? Edits for clarification. To clarify, 3 out of 5 of my daughters have already been to college. 1 graduated, 1 got pregnant and dropped out, the other 1 failed and dropped out. That part is kinda said and done, although they are still angry. It's only Angela and Sarah who haven't gone to school yet. Right now, they're researching/applying. The money that we will be earning from working overtime/tightening finances isn't going to be a life-altering amount. The major plan is to take out a loan for Sarah and have her pay us back. I realized the wording on the title was bad. Secondly, you all are accusing me of doing the bare minimum by paying child support and explaining child support couldn't pay for university. Read some of my comments where I outline this in detail. To everyone telling me in the comments and in PMs to just pay for college for all of them, why didn't you set up a college fund, etc.? If I could have, I would have. I can't make money materialize. My wife is not a new wife, and Sarah isn't a new kid. I've been married for 15 years and raised Sarah since she was a toddler. We tried to raise them all as sisters as best we could. And now for the top comments. Info. Do please tell us how much money you paid to cover 4 children's upbringing while also providing enough for your half of a university fund for all 4 children. Oh, also, I only plan on paying for Sarah's university. My bio daughter's mother is low income, so they qualify for student loans. So your stepdaughter gets a fully paid education and your daughter gets a bunch of debt? My bio daughters live with their mother and I had weekend visitations, so I am not as close to them as I am to my stepdaughter. Did you even try? You can forge a decent relationship with people you see every weekend, as long as you care to do so. I'm 100% sure you're the a-hole here, but more info would be good. You're the a-hole. Curious to know if OP actually knows how much a child costs, to even multiply it by 4. Must be hard to calculate from this middle income position higher than everyone else, huh? I paid a very large portion of my income over the years. I don't mind that part. Their mother, on the other hand, was constantly wearing designer clothing and getting food from restaurants just for her, while my daughters wore hand-me-downs and ate junk food for supper. I often still had to buy my children stuff, example, laptops for school, new clothing, food for lunch, etc. My ex lived in housing, so I know she had low expenses. I tried going to court to get stipulations on the money and failed. You're right that it would not have covered a university fund for all of them, but there definitely could have been a small portion put away. I don't want any of my children to have debt, but Sarah does not qualify for any assistance other than what she might earn from scholarships. If we don't help Sarah with her university, she might not be able to attend, unlike Angela. And I did try, but seeing my daughters every weekend is not the same as living together, especially because of the long driving distance, and when they got older, they started not wanting to visit as often. We also only have a 3-bedroom house, plus a basement, whereas they had their own bedrooms at home. You're the a-hole. I'll start by saying I don't think any kid is entitled to have their tuition paid by their parents. But you are showing favoritism for your stepdaughter. Just because your daughters can qualify for loans, they are still financially on the hook to pay those back. Your stepdaughter could technically get loans to cover her schooling as well, yet you are opting to help her and not your other children. Also, child support isn't necessarily to be saved for college expenses. It costs a lot of money to raise children, especially 4 of them. And the day-to-day cost of living expenses is what child support should be used for. That was a huge a-hole move, to try and throw their mom under the bus in this situation. Your logic is that your bio daughter can take out loans because she's low income, and you're giving your stepdaughter help because she's higher income? You're the a-hole. To clarify, I meant my bio daughter gets student loans from the government. I'm trying not to give out too much info, to help out low-income families. Because of our income bracket, my stepdaughter doesn't qualify for anything like that. But we are not actually as high income as we appear on paper. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for guilt-tripping my dad for cutting me and my younger sister out of his will? My dad, 67 male, and I, 24 female, are very close and always have been. He is a good-hearted, generous, kind person who has dedicated his life and career to helping people. I recently found out that he adjusted his will, such that I and my younger sister, 22 female, are not included as beneficiary in any way. Instead, our older brother Nate, 45 male, will get everything. He says that this is solely because he thinks my sister and I can take care of ourselves, but Nate can't. For some greater context, my dad has fully financially supported Nate for his entire life. He spends his time traveling around, painting. I think in his ideal world, he would be a professional painter and dating lots of women. He's never had a job as far as I'm aware. He has recurring health issues stemming from an accident when he was a young adult, and he is bipolar. He's never required in-home care of any kind, but he has been intermittently in the hospital throughout my lifetime, maybe an average of once every couple of years for several days at a time. I've never visited him in the hospital though, nor has my dad, I believe, because he's almost always traveling outside of the US. Nate and I didn't grow up together because of the age difference, and I do not like him. He's always been a condescending jerk to me, my sister, and almost everyone, and his financial relationship with my father has always seemed manipulative to me. When my dad told me about the changes to his will, I started crying. Part of it was shock/surprise, but yes, if I'm being brutally honest with myself about the type of person I am, and if I'm being transparent with you all, I had always had an expectation in my mind that when my dad died, both of my siblings and I would all receive a sizable inheritance. For context, as per Google, my dad would fall somewhat above upper middle class by US income standards. And it almost felt like an injustice that I had always been a great daughter and very close to my dad, but that I was being cut out of the will so that everything could go to my brother, who's always been kind of a jerk. So I cried. Then I asked my dad if we could stop talking about it. That was a few days ago, and we haven't talked since. My partner says I shouldn't be reacting this way, that I should call my dad and apologize for guilt-tripping him just for wanting to take care of someone who needs it more than I do. I have a moderately successful career so far. For what it's worth, I'm not in any way planning to cut off contact with my dad, spend less time with him, or convince him to change his will back. I won't even bring it up. This is solely backward looking to whether I was an a-hole when I cried and shut down the conversation. I know I mentioned before I'm really biased about Nate, so please give it to me straight if I'm clearly a greedy a-hole here. Now let's read the top judgment for this post. Not the a-hole, and honestly, your dad does suck for cutting you and your sister out. Yes, it's his money, but your brother obviously just expects it from him. It's a slap in the face. I would reconsider my relationship with my father. Not the a-hole for your reaction. Who wouldn't be upset if they found out their parent cut them out of the will completely in favor of someone else? Once you've both had time to calm down and process this, it may be a good idea to talk about it with dad, if only to give you a chance to tell him how you feel and why about what is done. Then you can move forward. I agree with all this for sure. Not the a-hole. If he really cared about Nate, he'd set up a dedicated insurance policy outside of his irregular wealth to fund for his needs, not cut off the rest of his family. It would be cheaper too than handing someone an estate to deal with. Not the a-hole. I think it would be a normal reaction to be hurt by being cut out of a will for your other sibling for basically no reason.
Am I the a-hole for pretending to not know my grandparents? Just for background information, when I, 19 female, was 4 years old, my dad died. At his funeral, his parents told me, my mom, 28-year-old at the time, and my sister, 6-year-old at the time, that we are the reasons he died. They also kept his life insurance money that was supposed to go to my sister and I. Since then, my grandparents have refused contact with all three of us. And the only form of contact I have with them is them sending me and my sister a $50 gift card to Walmart twice a year, birthdays and Christmas. The last time I received a gift card from them was on my 10th birthday, and it was for Babies R Us. I haven't heard from them since. They live in Florida and I live in New York, so I have no chance of seeing them either. At least I thought. Flash forward to present day, 3 days ago now, I was in Walmart near my house to get a few things for my mom. When I walked past the pharmacy, I saw my dad's parents. I tried to hide in the aisles because I didn't want confrontation, but they saw me anyway. They started asking me a bunch of questions about my family's financial situations at college and if I'm married yet, stuff like that. I responded by saying, I have no idea who you are. They looked angry and shocked by this, but told me who they were, and after that, I told them I had no desire to talk to them and didn't have anything to say to them anyway. I started walking away and was just going to leave it alone, but then they said, you're so disrespectful. We are your grandparents, and you need to treat us better than that. Your mom did a terrible job with you. After that comment, I turned around and went off on them. I said something along the lines of, you are not my grandparents, because you abandoned my sister and I after telling us we are the reasons for our dad's death, and you stole his money from us. Don't you dare talk about my mother either. Because she did an amazing job with us without any help from you two. I'd be happy with never seeing your sorry faces again. I started to walk away again and heard my grandmother start to cry, but I kept walking. Am I the a-hole? They're technically my grandparents, but they did so many things that are unforgivable. Edit. Also, my dad was active in the military when he passed. The VA has been paying my sister and I a certain amount every month since his passing. I did not have access to this money until a year ago when I turned 18. To me, it doesn't seem like a coincidence that they showed up only a little while after I gained access to that money. Now for the top comments. Not the whole. They are essentially strangers to you, of their own volition. You reap what you sow. I couldn't have said it better myself. Not the whole. Indeed. I really admire Opie for knowing exactly what to say in that moment. I think fate put them together so Opie could set the record straight. Not the hell for sure. Not the hell, and for my money, I'd say they were quizzing you about your education and finances and marital status because they are either in or about to be in dire straits money-wise. If they wanted to know all of that, they should have stayed in touch and not treated you so horribly. They live in Florida, but go to a Walmart in New York for their prescriptions? Right. I'd bet $1 they were going to try to hit you and your family up for money or lodging or something. That's what I was thinking. The only reason they'd have to come up to New York is for my aunt, Dad's sister. But even then, she lives an hour or so from me, and the Walmart where I saw them was 5 minutes down the road from my house. So why were they there, you know? Not the whole. If anything, you were nicer than they deserved. If they were so interested, where the hell were they for the last 15 years? Not the whole. What do they expect after literally stealing your inheritance completely and not contacting you with at least a phone call for literal years? Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for leaving a family gathering and insisting mother-in-law apologize over M&Ms? My wife, 34 female, and I, 31 female, have 2 wonderful children, 4 male and 4 female twins. They were conceived with my wife's eggs, a known sperm donor, and I cared/birthed them. Both kids ended up being practical clones of my wife, so it's pretty clear to everyone who contributed the genetic material. My in-laws had everyone together at their house earlier this month. We're all vaccinated, and the weather was nice, so we had a barbecue. My kids were outside playing with their cousins, and sister-in-law, mother-in-law, and I were chatting in the kitchen. At one point, my twins run inside from playing and ask if they can have some M&Ms that they see on the counter. I tell them, no, we'll be eating in 15 minutes, you can have them after dinner. They run back out, and mother-in-law excuses herself to go outside. A little bit later, sister-in-law and I get the call that food is ready, so we go outside, and I see my kids each have a little cup full of M&Ms that they are eating. I tell my kids that they knew they were not supposed to be eating those and took away the cups. Mother-in-law comes over and says that she gave them the M&Ms and they can have them. To which I replied, no, they can't. It's dinner time. You were there when I told them no. Mother-in-law says again that they can have some chocolate, it's fine, and tries to take the cups out of my hands. We go back and forth with no, yes, no for a minute, prompting wife to start walking over to us. Just in time to hear mother-in-law say, in front of my kids, I'm saying it's okay. They aren't even your kids. They're wife's. Just give them the chocolate. Wife had mother-in-law repeat herself and said something like, absolutely not. We're leaving. I put the M&Ms on the nearest table, grabbed both my kids, who were now softly crying, and started to pack our stuff. The whole event erupted into chaos. Father-in-law screaming about the disrespect of us leaving, grandmother crying, brother-in-law and sister-in-law arguing with father-in-law, mother-in-law crying that her only daughter was abandoning her. It was a mess. After a couple hours at home, the kids seemed okay, but mother-in-law saying I'm not their mom really scared them. Wife spent about 4 hours on rotating phone calls with all of her family, from father-in-law screaming at her, mother-in-law crying over how it took her grandkids away over M&Ms, and made her out to be a bad grandma, brother-in-law trying to get into drama, grandmother depressed saying she would die without seeing her great-grandkids again. Wife's message to all of them was that mother-in-law needed to apologize to me and to our children for what she said. We made it clear that we would have no problem spending time with grandmother and brother-in-law's family, but we would not bring the kids around mother-in-law until she apologized.
As you can guess, the apology has not happened. But the phone calls of guilt trips, yelling, and crying have not let up. I feel an apology is not even a big deal. And at this point, mother-in-law is making the choice not to see her grandkids. I want to hold firm, but I know how hard this all is on my wife, even if I really don't think it's my fault. Am I the a-hole for insisting on an apology? Not the a-hole. This was said specifically to inflict pain, to diminish your family. Even after an apology, not sure with that behavior I'd see her again. You birthed those kids. She knew exactly what it meant when she said it. Right? Over M&Ms, for Pete's sake. And it's not even about M&Ms. It's how she clearly doesn't respect/recognize Opie as a parent to her own children and will likely undermine her parental authority in the future. Not the a-hole. The argument wasn't over M&Ms. It was about mother-in-law disrespecting you as a parent. First by undermining you, and then by openly stating that she doesn't even consider you your children's parent, despite the fact that you grew them, birthed them, and are raising them. She implied that in her eyes, the only family that counts is genetics, not the people who are there for you every day, support you, protect you, and love you unconditionally. Her attitude is disgusting, and I'm so sorry she confused and frightened your children like that. She was 100% the a-hole. Just a cool little bit of info. The woman who carries the babies from donated eggs does have an effect on the baby's DNA. It has been found that the RNA of the birth mother interacts with the baby's DNA, turning on or off bits of the DNA. Not the a-hole. But please keep in mind that mother-in-law revealed how she really feels. She genuinely believes her parental rights supersede yours. And if you get some superficial apology, that's still a pretty lonely and scary place for you to be. You should definitely expect more than an apology. You need real contrition. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents not to raise their new child like they raised me? Before I was born, my parents had my older brother who sadly passed away of SIDS. Off the bat, they were trying to have another baby boy, and had my two older sisters before they had me. As the only boy, I was basically made a prince, and my sisters were pushed aside. Everything was about what I wanted. There was nothing I did that was ever wrong in their eyes, and anything to make me happy. Safe to say, I was a spoiled, entitled little brat that my sisters resented. That entitlement lasted until adulthood decided to hit me with a brutal reality that the world did not in fact revolve around me. A couple failed relationships later, I had to accept I was the problem and have tried to turn things around. I've been in therapy for a couple years to work out my problems and not be a total prick. My parents, by some miracle, decided to have a baby in their 50s. We're all shocked. But it's their lives, you know? Our little brother is a few months old, and finally we all got together to see him for the first time now that we're vaccinated. Later on in the day, I told my dad that I just hoped they'd do it different this time around. They asked me what I meant, and I pointed out like it was obvious. The way they treated me compared to how they did my sisters. Obviously, my problems are my own fault, and I take responsibility for my past actions. But the way I was raised is where a lot of those issues developed once I reached adulthood, and that negatively impacted my relationships. I'm 25 years old and only barely know mending my relationship with my sisters after years of dysfunction. My sisters chimed into the conversation too, and agreed they kinda messed up. All that was suggested was not to spoil our brother so much. Don't give in to every tantrum and actually discipline him. Our parents got pretty defensive quick, and we dropped the conversation. My dad has told me I had no right to critique their parenting or make any suggestions that they do things any different when they never did anything wrong. This has really upset them, and they're pretty mad that we ganged up on them. Technically, I started it, so that's why I wanted to ask if maybe I took it too far bringing this up and if I'm the a-hole. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Tell your dad that as a victim of their parenting, you have every right to critique it. That you are the one who decides if they did anything wrong, not them. Especially since they say they didn't do anything wrong, even if Opie's proof. They very much did a lot wrong. Dad, we did nothing wrong. Opie, hello Dad, I'm nothing. From what you are telling us, not the a-hole. Because you criticized your parents out of concern for your little brother.
not for retaliation or something. That your sisters are agreeing should let them see in theory that they are not as perfect as they think. Oh, and about the did nothing wrong part, you can also be wrong by doing nothing. You don't need to do something for that. Letting a child having their way and doing nothing, for example. So they may not have done anything, but the lack of parenting is there. You make a good point about the doing nothing. I agree with you there. Not today, Hall. If you're an adult, and your adult sisters also agree that your parents could have done a better job, the only acceptable response would be for them to take your critiques and learn from them. If your sisters agreed almost immediately after you brought it up, it means they've agreed this whole time, and each didn't want to be the first to say it. So don't feel bad that you sparked unnecessary dialogue. And this is about the well-being and humanity of a newborn child, so you have every right to not want your baby brother to have the same problems you did, and every right to voice concerns based on your lived experiences. I hope that your parents do better this time around. Add it, I'm also glad that you've made up with your sisters, because coming from an only girl, it can be absolutely infuriating when my parents treat my brothers like kings and me like a maid. Good on you for being better. I sure hope so. Obviously, not every single problem we develop later on in life is our parents' fault, but taking all this time to think back to our childhoods, there really was a lot of dysfunction, and I'd rather not end up with the same issues I've tried to overcome. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for exposing my parents' lies and damaging their reputation? I, 21 male, have a strained relationship with my parents. They are involved in pretty much every social event / circle in our city, be it church, school, clubs, etc. For them, what other people think is the most important thing. For that, they will lie about pretty much any bad thing that could potentially tarnish their standing, and have forced my sister, 24 female, and I to behave in certain ways or follow specific rules. Some examples. My sister and I were not allowed to play with certain kids in our school or neighborhood because their parents were in trade rather than academics. My parents forced me to stop talking to a really close friend in middle school because his parents got divorced. When I got caught smoking in high school, my parents made up a distant uncle with substance problems and told everyone he influenced me. My sister came home one day introducing her Spanish boyfriend to my parents. They didn't like that, so they told everyone the boyfriend is an exchange student that we are housing. My mother once made up a bunch of stuff about a neighboring couple. Stuff like her husband is cheating, she does it out contents to pay the bills. Of course, she always claims to have heard it from someone else, who heard it from someone else, etc. I could list plenty more, but there's text limit. Now recently, I was near my hometown visiting a friend, and I ran into the leader of a church group I was part of. I was pretty engaged in that group, so we sat down for a coffee and talked about the good old times. He asked me about my studies and how my fiancé is doing. I was confused and told him I'm not studying and don't have a fiancé. Turns out my parents made up a bunch of lies to cover the fact that I decided to go for an apprenticeship and turned out to be gay. One thing led to another, and together we went over a lot of incidences and stories from the past, with me exposing more and more lies. The results could be seen a few days later. My parents called me very angrily, asked me how could I do this to them. You ruined our lives. We can never talk to the neighbors again. I told them their entire reputation is built on lies and spreading rumors, that it is disgusting they even call themselves Christians at this point, and that I'm done being part of their little scheme. My sister later called me after mom called her in tears. She's torn. On one side, she gets me, as she already gone minimal contact with my parents. On the other hand, it solved nothing but hurt my parents. Sounds like you didn't even know that you were exposing them until it was too late. Someone asks a question about your life, and you answered. It's your fault your parents didn't tell you what to say. Joke. Not today, Hull. Don't know if it changes your voting, but I was very much aware that the group leader would spill the beans. This is a small town, and gossip is his lifeblood. I knew he would not keep it to himself and that it would spread. Still doesn't mean your parents should lie to save their reputation. Your parents dug this hole for themselves. Now they're just being outed as racists, homophobes, and they don't like it. If you have to lie to have a good reputation, you don't have one. They deserve it. Not only that, but imagine the lives they, the parents, have already ruined.
I'd be grateful to finally be vindicated over their BS. Not they, Hal. Consequences of their own actions, really.
That's the best way to put it. You reap the seeds you sow.